Dave is a man in a detective show who thinks he's in a detective show. You know, I wanted him to feel like he had a third eye on himself.
Well, I trained for months leading up to a shooting. I had intentionally put on 15 pounds by the time we started shooting, a total of 20 pounds by the time we wrapped of muscle. And so I was training with Jeanette, my trainer.
I did a lot of research because I played a porn director because they destroyed my career. And I watched a lot of porn to study it for this role. Thank you.
It shows. It comes through on the screen.
You need to get somebody quick before one of them kills again.
Fire isn't just an element. Fire is an organism. Fire watches.
I spoke to you back when you did Blackbird, and it was just such a phenomenal performance. And this is just the complete opposite. There is so much going on with Dave here. And at the very beginning, I went into this blind, not watching any trailers, not knowing anything about it. Watch those first episodes. And then when that twist is revealed in that second episode, like, how did I not see this coming? So as the episodes progress and we're learning more about who Dave is and kind of seeing into those elements, was it ever about you playing these things as more subtle in some places and more overt in others? Or did you always just kind of inhabit him as this flawed, pathological person?
No, I really did sweat and stress over how much to reveal at any one time. I think, I think it's fair to say that the character really blossoms at the end of the second episode. And up until that point, the performance is deliberately a little more muted, maybe, because I couldn't really lean into, or in fact, there were times where I leaned more into his oddness, but they didn't work in the edit of those first two episodes because you smell a rat, and that's no good. People will see it coming, but it's great when smart people such as yourself don't. That's a delight. That's a really great. That means we've struck the balance well, and it was hard for me as an actor to know where to pitch it at times. But once he turns around and snaps at Emmett in the second episode, from that point onwards, I'm keeping it pretty weird.
And you've done American accents in the past. There's a very distinct vocal performance here for Dave. Where did you find that voice? Was that in a deliberate to make him sound in a particular way?
I think I wanted him to sound like he was a kind of like, I said to Dennis very early on, I want him to sound like he thinks he's in Dave is a man in a detective show who thinks he's in a detective show. I wanted him to feel like he had a third eye on himself, and I almost wanted the voice to feel a bit affected. There's a lot about Dave that is affected because he's performing to himself. So there's a ton of things that I do in that show that are done because Dave's kind of watching himself all the time, and the voice is part of that. Really, I think it's about him wanting to seem, I don't have a particularly deep or gruff voice, and maybe Dave doesn't either, but I think he wants one. What I mean? I think he wants a deep, gruff voice.
And there's a moment in episode 7 when Dave and Freddie finally come face to face and they're having that conversation, and that's, I think, the most naked that we've seen Dave. Was that a challenging scene for you to portray that character as vulnerable but try not to show it?
Yeah, man. I think vulnerability is the one thing Dave can't do. I think it hurts him. I think he experiences it as a physical pain. So when someone holds up a mirror to him, figuratively and literally, it's a really uncomfortable experience for him. And Freddie, despite being in some ways, Freddie's a fascinating character, and Ntare's an extraordinary actor. And I think that character is in some ways a little limited cognitively, but in other ways has this incredible spiritual astuteness that he really brings to the surface in that scene, and uses it to hold a mirror up to Dave's ugliness. And it's not a good time for Dave.
Well, it's a phenomenal performance, and I love the series from beginning to end. It is just fantastic. I cannot wait for everybody to check it out. Thank you so much for your time today.
Likewise, thank you. It was a genuine pleasure.
Thank you. You've done, like in Birds of Prey, there's obviously a lot of physicality, a lot of stunt work that's going on. You had to do a lot of DIY house stuff here and a lot of running. That's clearly you. How much of that was just like, are we really going to have to keep running over and over again? Or was that just something that you just enjoyed doing?
Well, I trained for months leading up to a shooting. I had intentionally put on 15 pounds by the time we started shooting, a total of 20 pounds by the time we wrapped, of muscle. And so I was training with Jeanette, my trainer. And so by then, it was great, because in one of the running scenes, they were like, you gotta slow down, you're outrunning the tractor with the camera on it, you're going too fast. I love that stuff. I really do thrive on tapping into a level of physicality with my characters. I really do thrive in that area.
This character, like Michelle's got so much that's going on, and it's not just the investigative stuff, which is fascinating to watch, and seeing her actually be the detective that's unraveling and putting this together, but all of the things with her mother. That is such an emotionally gut-wrenching plot element to this story. What do you find to be really more challenging between the procedural stuff and really that intense investigative stuff, and then that emotional, familial part of it?
I definitely feel that for me and Michelle, going to those places and tapping into the emotional trauma of her childhood, that's definitely the more challenging moments. You gotta allow your heart to break on camera, and it means going to a place and accessing memories and things. And in Michelle, that's the thing she wants to do least, right? She doesn't want to be vulnerable. It terrifies her to allow people to see her sad or weak in any capacity. So, yeah, I mean, selfishly as an actor, I love those challenges, but definitely that whole storyline was the more challenging aspect of the character. That and the Steven element and the way it kind of all blends in, because it affects the way she attaches to Steven. The fact that she is an avoidant. The second he leaves his wife for her, she wants to leave him, because it now means this relationship could be real. When he was with his wife, it was safe. She could have her cake and eat it too. There was this distance because they couldn't really be together, right? So playing with all those dynamics, it's thrilling.
And I went into this series without knowing anything about it, just based on you and Taron and Dennis. And I'm like, I'm going to watch this regardless. And as I started to watch it, in the early going, the sequence with the bunker and then trying to kind of frame everything for that part of it, I'm like, oh, please don't let her be, the villain of this story. But I think it does go into the realism of these people, that they're not just good guys and bad guys, that there are these elements to it. But I think it also ties into Michelle being called a knight, like she wants to do right and she wants to be able to be the hero. Was that kind of central to you portraying that side of her?
Absolutely. But also, in addition to that, is her wanting to be the hero, but her also dancing with danger. She leans into elements that are actually destructive for her goals. Because like many of us, we might say we want to be happy, but we are consumed by the things that are going to destroy us, right? And so, yes, she ultimately wants justice, and she might be a detective, but she's willing to break the law in order to achieve her goals, because like any human being, she's flawed.
And working with Taron, and Michelle obviously knows who Dave is and is having to play the part of figuring this out and getting him and catching him in the act of all these things. What was it like working with Taron as a scene partner, knowing that he's got these layers to his performance as well? Was that something you prepped in advance, or did you just find that on camera?
I mean, I definitely prepped Michelle's internal life and how she approaches Dave. Because initially, she's very humble with Dave and feeds into his male ego and pretends as if she doesn't really know much about arson investigation, although we end up finding out slowly through Colonels that, yeah, she read all the files. She she knows a lot about the potato chip arsonist, right? And that throws him. But initially, she's trying to disarm him because she needs to use him. She needs to catch these two arsonists and get out of here so she can go back to her boss and say, see, I told you, can't hold me down. So I definitely played with the manipulative way that Michelle approaches Dave.
Awesome. Well, it is a absolutely sensational performance. You knocked it out of the park. I cannot wait for everybody to check this out. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much for the love. That's very kind of you.
John, 23 years ago, almost to the day, you were in Point of Origin, which is almost the same story as this. What was it like being in a different version of that same tale? Obviously different characters, but what was it like did that occur to you? Like, I'm in this story again?
It's so crazy. I mean, it's a famous story. So, I mean, obviously they're going to do different takes on it. John Orr was the infamous arsonist in American history. So yeah, but this is so much better. I mean, the other one was not as good. This is fantastic. It's exciting. It's thrilling. I mean, I love this show. The other one, I got paid well.
There you go.
And the introduction of your character, when we first see Esposito in this story, he's rough. Was it fun playing this character as not being like the consummate professional, but just kind of putting it all out there and just being who he is?
I love Ezra. I thought Dennis wrote a real character that was really exciting for me. He said he wrote it for me. At first I was insulted because this guy's a drug addict, adult porn director. But then I ended up loving Ezra. I love the language. Like Anna was saying, it's so well written. You don't even have to act. But don't tell them that because they'll lessen our salaries.
Yep. No. Yes.
They still need it.
Dennis can't do all of the roles by himself.
He could actually.
Well, and Anna, for you come into this story just like John, you do, towards the middle of the series. So a lot of these characters, the relationships have been developed. Does that make it more challenging as a performer to come in and kind of have to become part of this group after it's already been established?
Honestly, a little bit. I don't know how you found it, but like you kind of come in and well, I have a character, what I know about it, but everybody's been here for a while. Everybody's been doing, like everyone's kind of, got their rhythm, and you never want to step into a production and like kind of disrupt the rhythm in a bad way. Disrupting the rhythm in a good way, maybe that's what you're there for. But yeah, it's something that you kind of have in the back of your head. But then you trust the text. And that's just always the answer.
I don't usually trust the text. I usually don't. But Dennis's writing is so fun. I barely had to do anything. I mean, seriously, I'm always rewriting it because I just find it kind of bland and
you're
dull.
You're a great writer as well.
Oh, so thank you. That's what I was fishing for. That's
there you go.
That's what I'm here for.
Yeah. Never mind your questions. I want to talk to
Well, speaking of that, like the two of you, I think your characters spend a lot of time together. You're almost partnered up for a lot of your scenes here. The scene in the car where you're staking out the house, and it's just this awkwardly fun moment in a really relatively serious show. Was that a challenging scene to get through without breaking character, Anna?
Honestly, no, because it was, I mean, we're just going to sound like broken records, but the writing is so good. You trust the text and you commit to it. And yeah, it was funny. I mean, we laugh a lot.
We laughed a lot. Well, she's a funny lady.
Like we laugh a lot anyway, but not necessarily corpsing, like not necessarily breaking character.
No,
we just think stuff's funny in general. But you want that to land.
Yeah.
So you commit.
I mean, having comic relief, you need that in these tense series. You need moments of relief.
Yeah.
literally speaking. And the scene was about some kind of asking for some kind of relief.
Yeah.
And it's a great scene all the way through to the end, in that, not to give away any spoilers, but that final really intense during the interrogation where your characters are like kind of getting out there and working to try and solve this case. Is there anything that you actually have to look? I mean, you've played characters like this in the past, but do you have to do research about how would investigators actually go about doing these things? Or did Dennis really kind of prep all that for you?
A lot of it was written. If you didn't do any research on your own, you'd be fine. But out of curiosity for myself, especially because I was coming in later, and I didn't get to have like all the like huge talks with like a table read or something like that. I did spend some time just finding out like who are the women at the ATF who have gotten to this position, who are leading up task forces, and I found some really specific like profiles on like women in the ATF, and it was great because it did help me remember just where they'd been before. We're not playing spring chickens like necessarily. We're playing people who've like been through several chapters of their lives already, and it's important to acknowledge that even for yourself.
I did a lot of research.
Awesome.
Because I play a porn director, because they destroyed my career. And I watched a lot of porn to study it for this role. Thank you.
It shows. It comes through on the screen. So you did a phenomenal job. But, it's such a great show. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Very excited to talk to you. This is such a sensational performance. I was just blown away by this. It was stunning to see. So congratulations on that, first of all.
What an entry point. Thank you. It's all downhill from here. Sorry.
I know, right? It's watching this series and the conflating storylines between Dave's storyline and Freddie's storyline, and kind of seeing how they're going. There's obviously a pathology that each of them has. I disliked Dave immensely watching this character because he's so unlikable, but Freddie, I just felt so much empathy and sympathy for him. What was it like trying to find how to enter this character?
It was really a big challenge to figure out how to enter this world. The character, the level of despair and trauma that he's probably gone through from birth to child to when we meet him is unfathomable. And I didn't even try to pretend to think that I could understand the level of the depth of despair he might have gone through. And Dennis gave me the wonderful gift of license to just play and have creative freedom to discover and play and, let the words take me to where they would. And so that for me was the entry point, the imagination, and sort of like being a kid in a playground and playing make-believe, but in these extreme circumstances.
There's obviously a physical component because Freddie transforms from the moment we see him in episode 1 all the way through the end. Like physically, I mean, you don't even in any way resemble Freddie. Like you were like lost in this character. The physicality of it, how did you figure out how to enter that? Like what was the prep for that part of it?
Well, fortunately, I was given all 9 episodes right from the beginning, so I knew the journey, the arc of the story, and I thought that Freddie is invisible. He wants to be invisible, and that I thought by the end of his arc that he should almost like disappear in front of our eyes. So I went on a juicing binge and juiced as much as I could, and walked like 11 miles a day, and lost like 40 pounds from the top of the show till when my last scene was.
Wow.
And that for me was like probably the hardest thing about the gig. Yeah, but it was a thrill. I was given the ultimate challenge in trying to play this most complex of characters. And so it was a thrill to try to meet that challenge. And your opening comment makes me feel grateful that it somehow was worth it.
And absolutely, like watching it, like I was glued to all of these different sequences. And there's the scene the delivery of when Freddie says whitewashed tombs and kind of explains that, it's just chilling seeing that connection between the two. Was there any prep work between you and Taron for that sequence?
We never talked.
Wow.
Yeah. I watched Taron on set. Like, I mean, I'm a huge fan of his work. He's a beast of an actor. And I'd gone to set a few times just to watch him do his thing and was just floored because he just chews up the scenery. He's like a vortex, like everything just goes straight to him. And I was like, how am I going to hold my ground in front of this guy? Like, it's like, so hopefully I was able to hold up on my own in front of him because he's such a compelling actor. But the way this scene is crafted, the tables are turned, you know. Freddie undresses the emperor in that scene and reveals the fraud for all to see. So I had the winds of change behind me.
And in terms of the physical transformation that Freddie goes through from the beginning towards the end of the series, the inverse of it is so much in the early going, very little dialogue. It's much more of a physical performance until we get towards the end, and there's a lot more that you have to say. Was it more challenging portraying Freddie without the dialogue, or suddenly having him speak towards those end sequences?
Well, I'll share a secret with you. We had a lot more scenes with dialogue that were cut. So maybe in the post they wanted to create more of a mystery about the character. I'm not sure, but there was some dialogue heavy scenes that are on the cutting room floor, and maybe they'll be in the DVD extras. Yeah.
That would be amazing. And I think that the level of detail that you put into playing this character is just, it's very impressive. And in seeing other roles that you've done, how does this kind of rank compared to other roles that you've been in terms of not just the complexity, but like the feeling you got after completing it and seeing it?
I am the worst judge. I never know if something's going to translate. I mean, as an actor, you think, I mean, I've auditioned for things where I'm like, I'm perfect for this. I'm going to nail this. I got this. And you don't get the job. This is an audition. This role was something I got. The audition scene was where he's in the barber shop shaving his head. Brenda's shaving his head. And I have no hair. I was like, how am I going to even do this audition? Like talking about shaving my head. I don't have hair. It just looks, it's a whole disconnect. I never would have thought I could get this role. So here I am talking to you about it and you're saying it worked. So I have I'm the worst gauge. But I can certainly say this has been the biggest challenge in terms of on-screen work. I mean, I've done stuff on stage, which has been really challenging, but this on-screen has been the biggest on-screen meatiest and most challenging role I think I've done to date. I'm doing a role on Dexter Resurrection, and that character is complete polar opposite.
Mm-hmm.
Character's name's Blessing. My character in Smoke could be named Curse. And so the fact that both will be out at the same time is going to be amazing. Like, I think people have whiplash because it's just one extreme to the other. Yeah.
Well, I can say as somebody who's seen it from an audience perspective, from a critical perspective, I don't want to throw out the word achievement, but this is a phenomenal, phenomenal performance. I really appreciate your time today, and I can't wait for everybody to check it out.
Well, from your mouth to God's ears, and thank you for at least sharing your enthusiasm with your audience. I'm so grateful for that.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
I absolutely loved this series so much. And, you know, after watching Blackbird and really kind of getting into that story and that being based on a true story, this is obviously inspired by a true story. Was there ever a conversation about taking this more of a true crime route and basing it fully on the source material, or was it always something that you wanted the freedom of it being fictionalized?
I wanted the freedom. When it was pitched to me by Carrie, who was working with me on Blackbird, I was like, I don't really want to I don't want to do another true story, man. I felt really hemmed in when I was doing Blackbird. I didn't mind it there. Sometimes you like the rails, but I didn't want to be hemmed in again. And then Carrie said, well, just listen to it. So I listened to it. And then I said, all right, I really love this one aspect of it, the fire and the pathology of John Orr. I love that. But I don't like anything. There's nothing else I really want to do. I don't want to be held to telling the story of an arsonist in Bernardino and San Bernardino and Glendale in 1988. I mean, that just was not my jam. So I said, I would love to do it if I can just take the pathology of the character, some of the fire stuff, and then just go hog wild. And Carrie, to his credit, was like, go for it. And then I pitched Taron before I wrote a line on the character, and he was like, I'm all in. And then I just went off and I wrote. I got my writing team together and we wrote it.
And I went into this blind knowing, you and Taron and Jurnee and everybody involved, like, I'm going to watch this regardless. So not watching any trailers, not knowing the source of the story, seeing the trailer after watching it and realizing that, some of the twist elements are revealed in the trailer. Was that ever a concern for you that you wanted to keep that hidden from the audience, or is that something that you were comfortable with?
I was totally comfortable with it because in this day and age, the audience is going to look it up. They're going to go on the internet. They're going to look it up before they even say, it was based on a podcast. What's the podcast about? It's about an arson investigator who was committing arson. Okay, well, that cat's out of the bag pretty fast, in my opinion. So that's why we didn't hold it too long in the holster. I mean, we fired that bullet at the end of the second episode. By the end of the second episode, you know who Dave is. And you don't know, actually, you know that Dave does bad things. You don't know how bad until the series wraps in 9 episodes. But it gives you, what we didn't want to do was there's nothing more frustrating than watching a show and getting ahead of them in terms of the big twist. As an audience member, I'm just like, oh gee, really? He was his father? I didn't figure that out in episode 2. You wait to episode 7 to pull it off and everybody's like, yeah, we got that, That's what I didn't want. I didn't want that vibe. So we thought we tried it in the first episode and it was too early. You hadn't settled into the characters yet. You didn't really know what the stakes were. We tried it in the third episode and it was too late. It just, by that point, the audience would have caught up. And so the second episode seemed the perfect place and the fairest place. So the audience could go, oh, I thought that, but they weren't like, I knew that forever. That's what we wanted.
And it's really interesting, after that second episode, I started to key in on these little elements of his personality and that pathology you're talking about. They become more apparent, like, oh, this guy's a little bit off here and there, and there's things about him that become more noticeable. And going back and rewatching those first episodes, you definitely see them more. But I was also very intrigued by the parallel with the Freddy character, because there obviously one is a very different pathology from the other. Did you find that writing Freddy as a character, that there was different elements of it that you had to kind of dig into, since that was not part of the original story?
No, because Freddy was inspired by an actual arsonist. And what I locked into about that arsonist was that he said working in fast food was close to slave labor. And I went, I worked in fast food. I remember what that was like. That sucked. And so we created Coop's Chicken. And then putting Freddy in that world, locking him down, and then realizing that he was sent out into the world with no tools, with no ability to survive it. The fact that he's made it to 43 is shocking. And then that he is deeply, deeply lonely. And so there's a real tragedy to Freddy, because he does not have the social skills to ever end his loneliness.
Yeah.
And, but what he does with that, we're not saying, sympathize with his actions, because his actions are horrific and they maim people and kill people. And so, he is one of what a friend of mine once said is one of my friend call him my sympathetic monsters. You kind of feel sympathy for him.
Definitely. And as Taron's character is writing, trying to become a novelist, was there anything that you put in there from your own personal experiences as a writer that kind of illustrated what his struggles were, or maybe some of the responses he was getting to his writing?
Sure, absolutely. We all had fun with that. All of us writers, the scene I thought it used to be a lot longer and it was a lot funnier, but it was too long. the scene where he's cooking and his wife is reading the manuscript, and he's just kind of, every move she makes, every sigh, everything he's reacting to, he lets the water boil over. All of that is taken from real life. I mean, I've put girlfriends, wives, family members through reading my manuscript with me in the room, listening for any sound. Well, what are you laughing at? What are you was that a sigh? You know, why aren't you turning the pages faster? Why are you stopping? I got to go to the bathroom. You know what I mean? That kind of stuff. So we're all guilty of that, and we're all guilty of writing bad lines, and we're all guilty of, you know, hoping. We're all guilty of what will become brutally apparent. Not in the second. I think it's the 4th episode, where he literally puts the book in ahead of his personal life. You know, it's more important to him that he's going to be, you know, because this book's going to make him rich. You know, all of that is stuff that we can identify with.
Awesome. Well, it's a fantastic series. I absolutely loved it. I can't wait for everybody to check it out. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for clicking on our video, everybody. If you like what you saw here, please make sure you like the video and subscribe and share with your friends who like this sort of content. JoBlo was created by movie fans for movie fans, and we appreciate your support.